linguists, thank you for watching Language Fluent. You're learning Japanese with me, Pooja. Today, let's just keep this language Japanese aside and let's think about why should you go about doing the whole process in the first place? Why should you learn Japanese? What is the use? As we say, 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗃? 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃? We will be looking at the answers to those questions in today's video. Why should you learn? And if you are at that point in your life where you are considering learning a new foreign language but you're confused as to which language to choose, or if you're considering learning Japanese but you feel that it's tough, then this video is definitely for you. Let's look at each and every point, analyze all the aspects involved, and finally conclude and see what is going to be our final decision. Okay, so we will just start. If you notice, we are all born polyglots or born multi-bhashi. We are Indians, and if you think that's not reason enough, I will just explain in the next 2 minutes and you will get convinced as to why you should definitely learn Japanese. From the time you were born, if you are a Punjabi or a Gujarati or a Marathi or if you belong to any part of India, if you notice, from the time you were born, you listen to one language at home, which is going to be your mother tongue. You heard it from your parents. The moment you step out, the society talks a different language. If you're a Punjabi, then you listen to Punjabi at home and Hindi in the outside. If you're a Gujarati, it's going to be Gujarati and Hindi. So the society talks a different language. Then you learn the second one. And you go to school. You're just 2.5 years old. You step into the school and you're going to be exposed to this new language called English. And mind you, all this doesn't happen in sequence. It actually happens parallelly. You learn Hindi, you learn Marathi, you learn English. If it's not going to be Marathi, it's going to be Gujarati. Or if you're a South Indian, then it's going to be Telugu, Malayalam, Tamil, English, Hindi. All this is just coming at the same time. And did we have a strategy? Did we even realize that we're learning 3 languages at the same time? We were just 3. We were actually only 3 years old, leave alone knowing that we were learning 3 languages. So we actually did all this, right? We could grasp 3 things at the same time. We are Indians, and that's one major reason which I would like to emphasize as to why you should learn a foreign language, because this is not something new. If you look at the Westerners, you see a Chinese or a Japanese or a German or a person from Spain, they will be focusing only on their language. They will not be giving importance for English. Though it is spoken widely across the globe, if you look at that particular country, even for this visa processing and other things, they ask you to learn at least the basics of their language and then come to their country. But we don't say anything like that. In fact, even Indians, one cannot actually learn every language in the different parts of India and then come to India. That's impossible, right? So that is one major reason why we can easily grasp new languages and go about learning anything new. Not just language, we can adapt so easily. So that is the first major reason. Second thing, if you look at the grammatical structure and the sentence patterns in Japanese, it is very much in line with our mother tongue or our native language than English. So if a Westerner is going to think about whether he has to learn Japanese, then his way of looking at the language will be totally different from the way we look at it. I will just explain this with a simple example. Let's take this very simple basic sentence, which is I am Ram. Now if you look at this sentence, let's translate this word by word from English to Hindi. I am Ram translates to मैं राम हूँ. Now if you look at a word to word match, what do you see? I matches with मैं, but am doesn't match with Ram, right? You have to look at whom, and then Ram comes in the end in English, whereas in Hindi it's going to be the second word. So there is this crisscrossing that has to be done. This is to put it in a more academic sense, you can call this the syntax of a sentence, and this syntax is very much in line with Japanese. When you compare Hindi and Japanese, both these languages have the same syntax, whereas that's not the case with English and Hindi. So that's the reason why you can easily grasp the language, because when you think about a sentence in Hindi or your native mother tongue and then try to come up with the sentence in Japanese, you can do it in a jiffy, right? The next one, if you look at the demography of Japan, you have a majority of the population which is at the older sector, it is more skewed towards the older people than the younger or the youth population, and it's actually the reverse in India. We have a lot of youth and we have less of the older generation people, and the Japanese want people to work for them because they don't have the young population, they don't have that advantage, whereas Indians, we have that advantage, and it's going to be very easy for you to get a job in Japan if you learn Japanese, because they are looking out for people in that workforce age category, right? So if you learn Japanese, they are going to just take you in because they are looking for people who have the necessary skills and who know at least basic Japanese, because they are not very well conversant when it comes to English, so they're looking for people who know at least basic Japanese. So if you learn it, it's going to be a major advantage, it's going to be a cutting edge. The next one, if you look at English as a medium of education in Japan, there are universities or there are schools that teach English as the medium of instruction, or the typical English medium schools. But when you compare the percentage of English medium schools in Japan with those in India, then that's going to be really a minuscule percentage, because even at the university levels, people are taught just the basics of English in Japan. They are not taught English like how we learn it. We learn the ABC in LKG and we are just using that as our medium of instruction, and we are well versed with that language, right? By the time you are just in your 12th standard, you would have completed at least 14 years or 13 years of learning the English language, and it is not learned as a language, but it is learned as a medium of instruction. So we learn our subjects in English, and that's a real advantage. We get so well versed in the language, and if you notice, even when we speak our mother tongue, we mix a lot of English. We can't talk in that pure Hindi or pure form of our mother tongue, right? So that's how much English has penetrated into our language. So if you see their culture and our culture, they have very less of English speaking people, whereas we have that biggest advantage, and they are going to easily hire us if you know the basics of Japanese. Next one, what is the demand for Japanese speakers? Now, I will just show you a small graph wherein you will see the number of speakers across the globe who know a particular language. So if you see worldwide, this is a known fact. So English speaking people are going to form a majority. This is followed by the Chinese speaking people, or the people who know Chinese, and then it's followed by Spanish, then you have German, and last you have the Japanese. So it means you have the least number of people who can speak Japanese across the globe. On the other side, you look at the foreign direct investment. So what does foreign direct investment got to do with me learning Japanese? If you see, foreign direct investment shows you the number of Japanese companies who are investing in India. So if you are going to get more of the Japanese companies in India, then they are going to need more people to work for them, to communicate with them, for all your business needs, for presentations, for explaining the results to them. They are going to need more people who are multi-bhashi, and they want more people who can speak both English and Japanese, right? So there, if you are going to be a person who is going to take advantage of that, then they are definitely going to hire you, and they are definitely going to see you as a valuable resource in your organization. Next one, what are the opportunities? Not just in the business scenario. If you learn Japanese, there are a multitude of other opportunities, like you can become a freelancer, you can become a Japanese tutor, you can do translation, you can do interpretation, and again I said there is a lot of demand in this sector, but the supply is very low because people always have this stigma that Japanese is tough, you have a lot of kanjis in there and it's difficult to learn, but that's not the case. If you learn the basics of Japanese and you have a significant amount of strength over that particular language, then you're going to it's going to open up a plethora of opportunities to you, so please have that in mind. And the last and final point, which I think is by far the most important point to be considered, this COVID scenario has really taught each and every one of us an important lesson, which is never rely on just one source of income. So if you're going to rely on just your employment or your job as a source of income, we could see that a lot of people were thrown out of their jobs and they were rendered jobless. They didn't know what had to be done. On one side, we had people taking up different activities which they had not even thought of. We saw the IT professionals taking up jobs which were totally unrelated to their profession. All this, we could explore ourselves and bring out the potential in us because of the COVID scenario. And this is one thing or one area that you should really ponder about. I think this is the time when you should really look at this. Should you rely on just one source of income, which is your job, in order to survive? If not, a luxurious life, if there is going to be some kind of a situation, a pandemic or something like that in future, you should have another source that you can rely on, at least for the intermediary period, which can let you sustain, which can help you sustain. Don't you think if you learn a language that is in demand right now, then it's going to help you in times of such crisis? So all these points that we discussed today, don't you think these are reasons enough for you to learn Japanese as a language? And if you want to learn Japanese, it has to be learned not just as a language but also with a tinge of their culture. Only then you will be able to understand the way they think, what their perceptions are, what their beliefs are. And we at Language Fluent teach you not just the language, but we also give you cultural insights. We also offer a lot of translation and interpretation services. And to know more about the basics of Japanese and how you can get to know the business etiquette, what are their cultural beliefs and everything, don't forget to click on the bell icon in your YouTube app to never miss out on our updates, because we'll be coming up with several other videos wherein you will be learning the basics of Japanese with me and also other tutors. So that's it for today. Hope this video was of good use and it would have helped you, guided you to take a proper decision if you are at that point wherein you are in a dilemma as to whether to learn a language, and if so, whether it has to be Japanese. So I hope it was of use. Thank you, and see you in the next video with more information about Japan and Japanese. Thank you.